Welcome, welcome back to the Spirituality with Ashley podcast. Still getting used to doing these intros, still figuring out the outros, but you know what? That is not going to stop me from bringing the content. Clearly, we're not going to be perfectionists this year. This is the year of getting the things done and not needing them to be perfect. That's where we're at. So, welcome. If you're new here, I'm Ashley. This is the Spirituality with Ashley podcast. And if you're not watching this, you can watch it on YouTube at the Spirituality with Ashley YouTube channel that I finally created. Otherwise, you can listen to this on podcast platforms. Right now, it is available on Spotify. It should be available in some other places soon. So stay tuned. I am getting on here to do an impromptu episode. I have this subject listed on my list of things I would like to talk about that I keep on my notes app in my phone. But I've already spoken about I want to record episodes when I'm feeling it, when I get the inspiration, when I get that thought, because I feel like it's important to follow that intuitive inspiration. And I'm doing something else right now, but I'm stopping everything so that I can record this episode. So, what I wanted to talk about is don't hit the mic. What I wanted to talk about is trusting yourself, trusting your intuition, and dealing with resistance. Trusting yourself and moving through resistance can be so challenging. I have done this many times, as I'm sure we all have, and I'm still doing it. And it's still not super easy. Let me sip my coffee. Oh, it's not hot anymore, but I'm still loving the coffee. When there is something you want, let's say that you're trying to manifest something, and if you have limiting beliefs or self-doubt, or you're not essentially creating the energy to align yourself with the outcome, with the experience, with whatever it is that you're wanting in that moment, if you're not energetically a match for it, it's not going to come to you. And resistance is that wall that keeps you from being an energetic match. And that's because when you're not an energetic match for something, you're how do I explain this? Because I feel like I'm already like getting off track. Let me pull it back. The reason that I'm talking about trusting yourself and resistance is because I've had some experiences that I'm going to talk about, one in particular, where I quit my job in 2020. At the end of 2020, it was my first real tech job once I learned how to code. And I got hired to the local government, and I was supposed to be building apps as a newbie little baby developer. And it was really cool. It was fun. I was so excited to have gotten that position, to be getting a paycheck, honestly. I mean, COVID literally hit a week after I got into my little office and set it up. And then all of a sudden, COVID happened, and I never went back to that little office. I worked from home from then on, and for that position anyway. And I remember being super excited. And then I remember getting into the job and then learning and going through the resistance of, oh no, this is so new, it's so overwhelming. But that's normal when you start a new job. You have to go through that process of just getting used to how things are done, finding your rhythm, all the things. And so I got past that. And then I was enjoying working from home. I loved the autonomy, the freedom that I got from that. And it was amazing. And then I went through this spiritual awakening, really intense one. And I started just questioning everything. My interests changed, my routine changed. I started meditating, and I never thought that I could meditate. I always thought I was somebody that just could not meditate. I thought it was physically impossible because my brain works so fast. I have squirrel brain. If you look up squirrel brain, my picture, a picture of my face is right there. I usually speak really quickly also because my brain works so fast and it's always making these connections and analyzing and so I have to get it out. So I speak really fast. And so anyway, I started meditating and I loved it. I fell in love with it. I am somebody who has dealt with perfectionism my whole life. I want things to be perfect and I I put 100 million% into everything that I do. I just pour myself in. And so that has led to me having a lot of tension. I have a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, less so than I used to. But I used to just be a little stress ball, just a neon anxiety sign, if you can imagine that. That was me. And so when I learned how to meditate, it taught me how to physically relieve, release, let go of that tension that I was holding on to in my body. I learned how to relax through meditation. And oh my God, it was amazing. It was so amazing that I got addicted to it. And not addicted in a bad way, but like I went from meditating for maybe 20 minutes to immediately within a couple of weeks meditating for hours a day. It became my favorite thing to do. I didn't want to watch TV. I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to meditate because I was going on these adventures where I would like have out of body experiences. I was leaving my body and just floating around the galaxy and interacting with my spirit guides. And after about 2 months of that, like regularly, I meditated every single day, a whole lot. And I got really into crystals. I was just buying all the little crystals and using those during my meditations and learning how to cleanse my aura and, do the things. And I was still very, 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 very much in the beginning stages. And then I started experiencing some different kinds of experiences that were not happening in meditation. They were happening outside of meditation. I feel like that's going to be a whole other podcast, but just to kind of sum it up, or a whole other episode, gotta start saying episode, not podcast. But to sum it up, what was happening was I was hearing things in real life. And I've heard different things along the way about what that means. Like, oh, if you hear it outside of yourself and it's not your voice, it's bad. It's these negative entities. Or there's so many perspectives out there. Man, I'm also going to do an episode about like listening to your own internal like truth, your own discernment, and just allowing what other people say to kind of come and go, because listening to other people's perspectives can throw you off sometimes and kind of put you on a trail or a path that's not in alignment with your actual trail or path. So anyway, that's a whole other episode. But I started hearing things. I would be in the shower and I heard a voice that was not my voice. And it started talking to me and it seemed really nice and kind and helpful and was like, hey, I'm going to teach you how to remember who you are. And I was like, whoa, cool. I would love that. Let's go. And like, it didn't feel bad. I was really excited because I'd been wanting that. And it was cool. But then I started having some other experiences. I would be in the shower. Water, man. Water is very conductive when it comes to energy. Conductive, is that a word? Well, whatever. We're running with it. Water conducts energy very well. If you want to communicate with your spirit guides, if you want to, connect communicate with your higher self, water. Be by a body of water, be in a body of water. Just water is the key, guys. Anyway, I would be in the shower and just one time this happened. I heard somebody scream my name from my front door. I lived alone at the time. I was in my apartment by myself and I had to stop the shower. It freaked me out so bad. I stopped the shower. I got out, went to the front door, and I was just like, what the fuck? Like nobody was there. Nobody was in the apartment. I looked everywhere. I looked under things. I looked in closets. Thankfully, I was in a one-bedroom apartment, so it wasn't like a huge scavenger hunt, or whatever. I freaked me out. And stuff like that kept happening. And it was all like within the same amount of time, basically. So like after that one morning, I think early in the morning, I don't remember what time it was because I don't like to think about it, but I was awakened. I was woken up by somebody loudly whispering my name at the foot of my bed. Like I heard, and I was like, what the fuck? Again, live by myself in my apartment by my lonesome. And I was like, what? I just lied there and kind of like pulled the covers more over my face because I was like, this is some bullshit. Like, just I did not sign up for this. I don't want this at all. I was not excited about it. I didn't like it. That made me scared. I was not happy. And I was talking to my mom about it. I had also started using a pendulum at the time and I cleansed it and set my intention before use and all the things. I was following the basic guidelines for pendulum use and also doing that daily. Anyway, I spoke to my mom and she, I know now that she had some different, we kind of, our paths diverged as though we were in a yellow wood. Robert Frost. Shout out to anybody who also loves that poem. Anyway, my mom is honestly, my mom woke me up. She got me to wake up that first spiritual awakening. She was the catalyst for that in 2020. And it took me probably about 6 months for it to actually work and me to be interested and start going down the rabbit holes of who I am and doing all the soul exploration work and stuff. And we did have some beliefs that lined up. However, we also had some different beliefs and the way that we saw things and our perspectives. They just kind of, they diverged and went different directions after a while. They started doing that at this time in 2020, but I didn't really realize it because my mom was the person that I spoke to about spirituality. And also my really good friend, Chelsea. Shout out, Chelsea. Love you to death. One of my best friends, who I haven't spoken to in a while, but I love you, Chelsea. Life, we will reconnect. Anyway, my mom was concerned and she was like, I think you might be connecting with something that's not super positive. So I would encourage you to stop. She didn't use those words. That's how I'm going to phrase it. It was a little more urgent. We can all be dramatic. Apparently, drama runs in my family. And so I immediately shut it all down. I was like, no, I don't want to do this. I'm not doing it. I stopped meditating. I stopped everything, shut my spiritual journey down. The doors were closed. And I didn't come back to it. I think the next year I probably came back to it, but there were other things that happened in that time. So I stopped all the meditation. I still liked crystals. I kept those out. I was still kind of watching spiritual stuff. I think I did hardcore like stop for a few months. Anyway, at that time, remember I was working at that job, my first tech job that I got. I was so excited about it. And I had gotten to this point where it was just, I felt so much resistance between me and the position. I just couldn't stand it. There was something in me. It made it so hard to sit down on my computer every day. Like it got to the point, and there were a lot of things leading up to this point, but we're going to cut the story short because I don't want this podcast episode to be longer than an hour. So it got to the point where every fiber of my being was like, it's time to quit your job. And my mom had been telling me for a few months because she was always going into my Akashic records and we would have all the conversations and she was telling me it was time, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I think she'd been telling me since summer, probably, or maybe October, August, maybe she started telling me like, hey, you need, and I was like, what? I was like, that's absolutely crazy. I wasn't fully on board with it yet. I was still getting into my spiritual practice and I was just like, I don't know about quitting my job without a contingency plan. How am I going to quit this position? I just am getting on my feet after getting divorced, not having a job, and having the hardest time bringing in money. And now I have security. Wasn't making a lot of money, but I was making enough to survive and be on my own. And so I was so resistant because I was like, no, how I'm supposed to quit my job, but what does the rest of it look like? What am I supposed to do for money? And of course she was like, it'll come to you. It'll all work itself out. And I was like, no, 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 no. that's not how the world works. That's not what I know. Finally, it got to be about November and something I could feel it building up. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to quit this job. I'm going to quit this job. I need to be doing what I'm passionate about, what I love. I loved talking about spirituality, but I really wasn't, I still wasn't there yet. It wasn't time for me to be like, I'm going to branch out and go full spirituality path. Like that wasn't it for me at that point. I was not ready. I needed to do some more developing. I needed more exploration as far as who I am. I had to have some more awakenings. I needed to get to the next level. I wasn't there yet. And so I was like, oh, I really want to get into design because what I was doing, I was building apps completely, but I really liked the design part. Like, oh, just give me some creativity and choosing layouts and doing the thing. I love it. Designing the user experience, love all that. And so I'd started studying that on the side and I was like, that's what I want to do. I just want to build websites for people, build websites and apps and design the things. And so I was like, I'm going to freelance. I've been practicing on my own. I know a lot about that. I'm good at it. I'm going to freelance. And so in my head, I was like, I'm going to quit my job and I'll just go freelance. And my mom at the time was like, we need to go to Maine. Our soulmates are there and all this. And if you listen to my tone, I'm saying it like that because she really loved my mom, love her so much. She liked the idea of us just always being together and being on our life, the same life path together. And that's not the reality of how it worked out. And I understand why she wanted it to be like that. It was really fun to hang out and we were very close, but our paths were not the same. And anyway, I kind of jumped on the bandwagon for a little while, or I jumped on board with that idea. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to quit my job. We'll move to Maine. We'll find a place. It'll all work out. It's going to flow. And I'm going to do this freelance stuff that haven't done in a long time, but it's going to happen. It's going to work. And I was already researching like freelance projects and kind of trying to figure out, how I could budget and what kind of money was possible with that. So I quit my job in November and it felt amazing. It felt so right. I wasn't even scared. As soon as I quit, the day that I quit, I was like, oh, oh. I was just like, yeah, that was the move, 100%. And then life got a little weird. And I remember going to another one of my best friend's houses, and her husband were talking to me about it. I was like, hey guys, these are my life updates. I quit my job. And they're like, what? You quit your job? You what? And I was like, yeah, I quit my job. I'm gonna move to Maine with my mom. And my friend was like, you're gonna move to Maine with your mom, who you've been having, relationship growing pains with as you've been on this journey. I was like, yeah, that's the plan. And she was like, cool, 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 cool. And then I was like, yeah, I'm going to do freelance work. And like, I'm going to do freelance tech stuff and I'm going to build websites and design the things. And they were both just kind of like, okay, we support whatever you want to do. That sounds real out of the blue and strange, but sure, why not? Question mark. And it was really, I don't want to say coincidental because there are no coincidences. Things happen for a reason and things flow in certain directions for reasons unbeknownst to us a lot of the time. So her husband, also one of my good friends, was like, hey, the woman who's currently in the position where I work, and he worked for the military, he was like, she is a contractor. She's not in the military. And she does all of our data stuff. She makes like 100K a year. Why don't you look into that position? We need somebody for that. And I was like, oh, cool. I was like, I would totally stay here where I'm currently living. I was in Georgia at the time. I was like, I will totally stay in Georgia for 100K a year. That was more than twice what I was making at my current job. I was making 45,000 at that first job. And I just needed to get a job so that I could start my professional, career path in tech. And so I didn't care. I was like, 45, that's more than the zero I'm making currently not working. But then I quit that job. And so I was like, obviously I want to make more than 45,000. And now I have a year of experience under my belt. So Yeah, I ended up calling the chick at the military contractor. I called her and talked to her about the job. She ultimately told me, she was like, we talked about what my qualifications were and everything, and she ultimately told me I was overqualified for it and that I would be very bored. And my mom was also like, yeah, that just doesn't sound like the job for you. And so I was like, okay, whatever. I took about a week off. Well, I mean, I didn't have a job anymore because I quit my job. I took a week. I went to go visit my mom. She lived in North Carolina at the time. So I drove to North Carolina, visited my mom, talked to her about it. She was the one that was like, yeah, it doesn't seem like it would be a good fit. And I was like, hmm. I still had it in the back of my mind though. I got home and I was like, man, I think I might like that. I'm feeling kind of interested in it because it's data that I would enjoy working with. It was performance data and fitness stuff. And like, that's my jam. I love fitness. I love fitness, health, all the things that have to do with that kind of performance. Love it. And so I called the job back, and she didn't work there anymore. She had completely quit. And thankfully, I was able to submit my resume to somebody else there who could get it to the right person. And I had the interview. And this weird thing a couple of months prior to that had come up where unicorns just became such an important symbol for me. The unicorns were everything, loved them, obsessed. I've always been obsessed with stars, and I love the shape of stars and just stars in the sky, constellations, all the things. And suddenly I loved unicorns randomly. So stars and unicorns became my thing. And well, unicorns became my new thing. Stars had always been my thing. But anyway, during the interview, the guy mentioned unicorns, and I was like, what? Like, we'd been talking about a bunch of stuff and vibing, and like it was going really well, honestly. And then he was like, oh, well, based on your skill set and your experience and your personality and, blah, 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 you're a unicorn. And I was like, oh my God. And it was like this green light went off, this confetti floated all around me. I don't know what I'm kind of seeing I'm painting right now, but it was amazing. It felt like validation, like a synchronicity, like this is for you. He said unicorn, that's your key word. This is a go. Like, we're doing this. That's all that needed to be said. And I was like, oh my God, I need this job right now. This is amazing. It's flowing. It's going so smoothly. It was easy for me to get the interview. It happened really fast. And so he offered me the position and I accepted it. I got like a $10,000 raise. So I was making 55 at that job. And it was just so weird how that all fell into my lap. I ended up being at that job for a year and a half. And then I got recruited for a different job that made way, 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 way more money, is what I'm going to say. We're not going to be specific about it because I don't really feel like that matters. But that next job that I got recruited for based on the things that I learned in the job that fell into my lap that my friend told me about, like just the sequence of events I find is so interesting, the way that it worked. And had I not listened to my intuition and quit my job when I did, and had I not gone to my friend's house and talked to them about what was going on, I wouldn't have found out about that other job. I wouldn't have applied for it when I did, and I might not have gotten it because I would have never done the things I just said. Like, amazing. And had I not been in that job, right when they were adopting this new technology that I needed to learn, I was at the forefront of like that technology. I learned it very well. I was the only one there who knew how to use it. And that's what I got recruited for in my current tech position. That's what I do, is use that technology. I'm one of the subject matter experts on it because it's really hard to find people that use that technology and have the set of skills that I have in tech. And so it's just so weird how that all worked out. And so I like to think about that example when I'm thinking about trusting myself and the resistance that I feel in things sometimes. Sometimes, sometimes I get these intuitive hits, I get these knowings, and it's difficult to trust myself because where's the proof? Where's the evidence? Where's the I was going to say experience, but I've had the experience before where I've had these signs, I've had these synchronicities, everything just lined up and went super smoothly and got me to where I needed to go. And so I want to talk about resistance now because moving through resistance, can be so challenging. It is very challenging for me. I like to, I just want to give myself a pat on the back for even being able, like, now I love that I know about resistance. Just knowing what resistance is, which is where resistance is where there's something, resistance is that wall between where you're at and where you want to be, who you are, who you want to be. Like, that's resistance. It's the, it's the, it's resistance is where you, I want to say, avoid change, essentially. So I'm going to talk about ways to move through resistance, because just recognizing that it's there, it's not enough. There are other steps that you can take to get through it, to get you onto the other side. I had so much resistance when it came to quitting that first job. I was just like, what? I wanted to plan out everything. I wanted to have proof that my security would still be right there. But it was almost like one of those tests where the trust fall test or whatever. I don't know what it's called, but like somebody holds their arms out and then you just have to trust that they're going to catch you and you fall. That's what trusting your intuition feels like. And I feel like it doesn't matter how many times somebody is like there and does catch you, your brain will still be like, you still want to look and make sure that that person is there to catch you. When I quit that job, I didn't have a safety net. I didn't have that person who was there and gonna catch me. But something was so strong within my inner knowing, within my inner wisdom, within me, that I was like, it was like I just felt, I was like, this has to happen right now. And I kept on getting the messages, whether it was from my mom or, other things. The ones I mostly remember were the ones from my mom, because I had so much resistance to it. I remember having conversations with her about my resistance to that idea and why. And she could, of course, see the things I couldn't see because she wasn't emotionally attached to that decision. My emotional attachment to the decision, the uncertainty of what's going to happen after I make this decision, all of that was my resistance. It created the resistance in me, this fear that I would be homeless again, because I've been homeless before. The fear that I won't have enough money to buy food, because I've also been there where I'm just like, where am I going to get money to buy food? And those experiences were so painful and uncomfortable for me that I was in this place where I was like, I have to avoid anything that's going to take me back to homelessness, not having enough money to survive, having to depend on other people, having to ask for help. Honestly, deep fear of mine I'm working through. And that fear was preventing me from making that choice until something else overrode my fear. It got to the point where my intuition and me feeling like this was completely 100% the right choice finally overrode the fear, and the fear took a back seat, and I was just like, I'm doing this and it feels great. This is what I want. This is what I know I need to do. And then I quit the job and everything else just fell into place. That job fell into my lap. I wasn't looking for another tech job that paid more. That's not what I was doing. I just wanted freedom. And as it turned out, in that position, I had a lot of freedom. I learned so much. Oh my gosh, I learned so much. And it was not a job I would have searched for. Like, honestly, the first few months that I had that job, I hated it. The one that fell into my lap, I hated it. And then but I held on because I was like, I'm not supposed to quit this job. I was looking for other jobs too. And like, I wasn't finding anything. I was even having interviews and it just wasn't working out because I needed to stay in that position. Somebody new came in to be my boss, and it ended up being the most amazing thing. I learned so much from him, and just the people around that I worked with. I had so many opportunities for growth, and it ended up being the best experience. It was so good. You wouldn't know it if you'd asked me a lot of the days that I was there, but looking back, I can recognize that it was such a great experience. And I had to move through resistance to get that job. I had to move through resistance during that job. And I will continue to move through any resistance I have as other things in my life continue to change. And so, on that note, let's talk about moving through resistance and some of the steps that you can take to do so. So the first thing is practicing mindfulness. You have to make space. You have to stay present and aware of your thoughts and your emotions. And you're doing that in a way that allows you to observe the resistance without judgment, but you want to recognize that resistance is there. Allow yourself to the space to observe your emotions, your thoughts, your inner world. Allow it to just flow, and then you become the observer of that. And through that, that's you creating space for reflection, for self-awareness. That is where you're able to recognize, oh, I have resistance to this. And resistance can feel like procrastination. It can feel like avoidance. It can feel like, what's it called? Imposter syndrome. It can feel like anger. It can feel like getting triggered by something. That's resistance can feel like those things. It can feel a lot of different ways, but those are the first main ones that came to mind, those 5. And so when you experience resistance, the next step, once you've recognized, oh, this is me being resistant. When I get triggered at work, I'm having a meeting and I speak up, I have an idea, and then it gets shot down or it's not even acknowledged. And then 20 minutes later, somebody else comes up, air quotes, with the same idea. And then everybody's like, oh, that's a great idea. We're totally going to do that. And I'm just sitting there like, what the actual fuck just happened? That is a trigger. That is resistance to me being heard, to my voice being heard, to me speaking up, to me being confident in my ideas and standing up for myself. That trigger of me getting angry and then just wanting to shut down and leave the meeting and be like, fuck all of you, that's resistance. Resistance to the opportunity for growth, which would be me speaking up and saying, hey, I mentioned that idea previously, and this is my thought process or whatever, and just contributing my own voice, my contribution, standing up for myself, essentially. So you first have to recognize the resistance. How is the resistance manifesting? And then once you recognize how it's manifesting, then you go into self-reflection. That's the second step. And during self-reflection, that's where you figure out, okay, where is this resistance coming from? I'm feeling angry, but am I actually angry, or am I sad because I chose not to stand up for myself? Is this sadness? You want to reflect on the source of the resistance, and you want to identify fears or limiting beliefs or past experiences that may hinder you. So with the example of my job, the past experiences that hindered me, the past experiences that created this deep fear, this insecurity around not having enough money, those experiences of being homeless, of not having enough money, made it so difficult for me to imagine quitting my job and just trusting that the universe would present me with the opportunities I needed to continue to move forward on the path that I was on. It took so much trust, and it was hard to trust myself while that resistance, while that wall was right there, that wall built by past experiences that bred fear. And oh my gosh, just even talking about it, I'm like, oh, I've come so far. It's just wild to think about how life works. So anyway, first step, mindfulness. Create the space for insights and reflection. So once you've created the space for reflection, second step is reflection. Identifying the fears, recognizing the resistance. Where's it coming from? What's the root? And once you understand the root, you can set clear intentions about what you want to achieve or experience. You accept that you have that fear. You recognize it, you accept it. Okay, this is a fear I have. This is a deep-rooted block that I have, and I want to work through it. So then you set your intentions. I want to let go of my fear of being homeless and not having enough money for food. I want to let go of my fear that I cannot trust myself, which has been indoctrinated into me since I was a child by society, that you're not supposed to trust yourself. You have to look for evidence and you have to understand and reason and plan everything out. That's that is what was socialized into me, into a lot of us as kids, because it's just those are the rules that we agreed to play by when we incarnated into this society. But as we were remembering who we are, we decided we were going to come down here, forget who we were, forget that we could trust ourselves, forget that everything within us is our compass, that we have all of the answers within us. So trust yourself, learn to listen to yourself, learn to remember that connection. We forget that. And so when you're learning to trust yourself, it's just you remembering what it feels like to be connected to that divinity that is within you. Listen to how you feel. Learn how it feels when something is for you. Learn how it feels to experience discernment when something is not for you. And so by moving through these steps of dealing with resistance, that's part of how you learn to do that. It takes practice to create that kind of like muscle memory. So after you set clear intentions and you clarify what it is you want to achieve or experience, the root of your problem, uncovering, unveiling the different layers of whatever the root of this fear is, then after you've accepted it, you also have to accept and realize that growth is uncomfortable. It's not always going to feel amazing. Growth comes with uncertainty. If you are here and you're trying to be over there and you've never been over there before, there's uncertainty over there because you've never been over there. And so when you're growing, when you're up leveling, when you're becoming a new version of yourself, which you can do every single minute of every single day, there is uncertainty that is woven into that you have to learn to overcome and just be okay with. You have to learn to be comfortable with the discomfort of uncertainty. I'm not saying get over the discomfort. It's fine if you're uncomfortable about it. That's totally okay. That's just you recognizing how you're feeling. It's being aware that you're going to feel uncomfortable about it and accepting that discomfort and just kind of sitting in it and being like, I'm going to let go and I'm just going to flow with it. Abraham Hicks has this really amazing way that she describes it. And it's where you have oars and you are just paddling. This is how I paddle. It looks like I'm skiing. Paddling. There you go. That's a way better paddle. You're paddling against the tide and you're not really going anywhere. You're just kind of sitting in the water because the tide is flowing this way behind you. You're paddling forward. You're going against the current. So drop your oars and just allow yourself to go with the flow. Allow yourself to float with the current and stop fighting it. So, okay, where was I? I was just on a tangent. Something new and different here. So once you accept where you're at and you accept that growth involves resistance, that resistance you're feeling, that's you about to grow, essentially. That's you stepping out of that comfort circle. So we live in our comfort zones. Imagine you're in a bubble. Right outside of that bubble is growth. So resistance is what happens as you're getting closer to the edge of the bubble and moving into growth. So have gratitude for your progress at this point. Start practicing gratitude for how far you've come, for what you do have, for the progress that you've made, for the times that you listened to your intuition and it was totally right. And then acknowledge that the challenges, that discomfort that you're facing, that's creating opportunity for you. That's opportunity rolling in. I was so uncomfortable with the idea of not having a job after I'd worked so hard to get a job. But then I realized that I was uncomfortable with the job. Like I wasn't loving my life at that point. So I can be uncomfortable with something that I don't like to do, that is not really feeling like it's moving me further to where I want to be, or I can let go of that thing and I can trust that the universe is going to help me to pivot to where I need to go. The universe is going to put little bright orange cones to help me to figure out which direction I should go. Almost kind of like think about bumpers, like in a bowling ball. You know, when you're bowling as a kid, maybe even as an adult, no judgment here. You're bowling and they put the bumpers so that your ball can't go into the gutter. It's what the universe, it's what your guides do for you because everything is happening for you. You're not here to be tortured. You're here to remember who you are and to get onto the path of least resistance for your highest good. Literally, that's what you're here for. That's what we're here to do. So avoid putting unnecessary pressure on yourself. You don't have to have everything figured out. You just have to learn to trust yourself and learn discernment, because they go hand in hand. The more discernment you have, the more you can trust that inner knowing that we all have. All of us have it. And let go of the control. Step out of your comfort zone. Trust the process. Let go of needing to know how something is going to happen, needing to know when something is going to happen. Practice mindfulness of being in the moment, being grateful for this moment, paying attention and being aware, reflecting on how you're feeling. And then as things come up, reflect on how you're feeling about those things. I had to do that for a few months when I was quitting that job in 2020. When it first got brought up to me, like, hey, why don't you quit this job and go do something else? I was like, oh, absolutely not. I can't do that. I have to keep this job. I have to keep this job because I have to make money, and I have to make money to save, to pay my bills, and so that I can stay on my feet. I just got back onto my feet. I'm not going to go back to where I was just at, because those are the only two options I saw. I was like, I can stay at this job that I'm not super enjoying anymore, or I can go back to being homeless and having a hard time supporting myself with not enough money. Those were the two options I saw. I didn't even fathom when my mom was first like, it's time to quit your job. I was like, what? I immediately freaked out because those were the only two options I saw. I didn't even consider that there was another option, which was there's another job that's more aligned with you that's going to help you get to where you're trying to be. Couldn't see that because I was like, I haven't applied for another job, so why would another one be sitting there waiting for me? And I wasn't taking into account that I didn't have to know how something was going to happen. I didn't need to know why something was happening. I just needed to trust myself. Your intuition is not always going to make sense. A lot of the time, it doesn't make sense. Have you ever met somebody and got a weird feeling about them? They seemed really nice. They seemed cool. Sure, why not? They weren't, walking around with a knife with blood on it, stabbing people, but you just get this like weird ick or I'm not really a fan kind of a feeling. It's your intuition. Is there a reason for you to have that feeling when you meet somebody and they give you no reason to get an ick feeling? No, sometimes somebody's energy just rubs you the wrong way. And it's so much easier for us to accept that, like, I don't think I want to be this person's friend. I don't think I'm going to hang around that person anymore because I got an ick weird feeling about it. That's your intuition. It doesn't make sense if they didn't exhibit any like weird behaviors or anything and they seemed perfectly fine, but you got a feeling about them. That doesn't make any sense, but it's true. I'm sure many people have experienced that. So yeah, but we continue to look for meaning and reasons and evidence for our intuition, even though we are aware of this. So something to keep in mind. I do it all the time. I'll get an intuitive hit about something, and then I'm like, oh, I've got to plan it all out. I got to figure it out. How is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? What's going to happen? What are the steps? Like, there's just, if you are an analytical, very cerebral person, you do it a lot. It's just a thing that you do. And so it might make it a little more challenging. I feel like I chose to be like that for a reason, so I'm not upset about it. I love being analytical. I love being logical and cerebral about things. It just makes it that much more satisfying when I am able to tap into my intuition for myself and flow with that. It's so satisfying. It's a nice feeling to be able to experience both sides of that, being very logical, but also being able to go with the flow and listen to my intuition and just trust that that's the best thing for me at that time, regardless of whether there's logic to support it. So another couple of things that I wanted to mention that help with moving through resistance, once you let go of the control, you step out of your comfort zone, is having patience. Patience is one of the steps, one of the most important steps. You could have patience flows throughout this whole process of releasing, letting go of resistance. And the patience is you creating space for insights and changes to happen at their own pace. That's patience. Being aware that even though you want something, I quit that job and I honestly, I wasn't even thinking about like when anything was going to happen. I just knew I had to quit the job. It was the weirdest thing. Even talking about it now, I'm like, what was I thinking? What? But I wasn't attached to any timeline. I wasn't attached to the outcome. I just knew in that moment what I needed to do was quit my job and the rest would figure itself out. I just had faith. I just had faith that it would work out. And I had patience. I wasn't in a rush. It's so strange reflecting on it now, like looking back. Oh my gosh, that's just, and even though I've done that before, it doesn't mean it just gets easier to do. Like, I cannot say that it's any easier for me to listen to my intuition and follow through with exactly how I'm feeling in each moment. It's difficult. It's difficult to get used to doing it because I still have the programming and the limiting beliefs. I'm still working through that. I'm still peeling back layers on my healing journey. So having patience, creating the space for insights and changes to happen at their own pace, and then visualizing positive outcomes. So when you visualize a positive outcome, when you visualize the situation as you want to be living it, and you pretend you're living that experience, that situation, that outcome, whatever it is, when you do that, it creates mindset shifts that increase your receptivity. And when you increase your receptivity, that means that you're more open to the opportunities when they present themselves. You're more apt to exhibiting the behaviors that are going to get you to that place. It's like that becomes your reality. When you're imagining, when you're pretending that that outcome is there, that it's happening, you're experiencing the thing, that's you being an energetic match for it. And the more you're an energetic match for it, the more you believe that that is your reality, the more that will be your reality. And I would love to go into like a scientific explanation for this. I'm sure there is one because, you know, metaphysics and quantum physics and all the physicses that I don't know a ton about, so I can't speak to it. But I can speak to the fact that energy is real. Your intuition is real. The universe is real. Like, there are things that I do know are real and I don't need the proof. I've never touched a star. You know what I mean? Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent again, but I want to recap these steps for working through resistance. So we've got being mindful, staying present and aware, self-reflection, reflecting on the source of your resistance, identifying your fears, limiting beliefs, past experiences that can hinder you. Then setting clear intentions about what you want, clarity around what you want, acceptance of where you're at, and acceptance that growth involves resistance, growth involves uncertainty, growth involves discomfort. And then avoiding putting unnecessary pressure on yourself, letting go of control, stepping into or stepping out of your comfort zone and trusting the process. Let go of that control where you have to have every single step planned out and know exactly how the outcome is going to go. Exercising patience, creating that space for insight and changes to happen at their own pace through patience, just observing and sitting back and flowing, patience, and then visualizing the positive outcome, allowing you to ultimately shift your mindset and increase your receptivity. Those were 8 steps. I think it might be 9, but whatever. We're not counting. It's just a process we're going over here. So that was all my way of saying that if you're scared of something, face it. If you're scared of something, figure out why you're scared of it. Explore that rabbit hole, and it will lead you to the next step, to the next layer, to the next phase, and trust that you'll get there when you need to be there. Trust that you are exactly where you need to be, that you are perfect, exactly how you are right now. Everything is happening for some reason. whether you're aware of that reason or not. And be empowered to take control of your reality, of the life that you're living. You get to create the life that you're living. We do not believe in coincidences. We do not let fear rule our lives. We let love rule our lives here. And we trust. We trust ourselves. We trust that we will receive what we need for our highest good in each moment. And with that, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for listening. I love you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you in the next episode. Until then, go forward, trust, tell somebody you love them. Look in the mirror, tell yourself that you love you, and practice gratitude. Love you guys. So thankful for every single one of you. I'll see you in the next episode.